Victoria Hale's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. The text message glowed on the screen like a threat. I see you with him. End it now or I'll destroy everything you've built. Across the dimly lit restaurant table, Ryan Carter was telling a story about his daughter, completely unaware that the man who'd tormented Victoria for 3 years was watching them right now. She had two choices: run like she always did, or finally tell the truth to this kind stranger who'd just bought her tacos instead of judging her for being broke. What happens next will shock you. Stay until the end to find out how one honest conversation changed two broken lives forever. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about blind dates is that everyone lies. They lie about their height, their job, their interests. They post photos from 5 years ago when they were 20 pounds lighter and hadn't yet developed the permanent exhaustion lines around their eyes. They pretend to love hiking when the last time they went outside for fun was never. Ryan Carter had been lying to himself for the past 4 years, telling himself he was fine, that he didn't need anyone, that being a single father to a 6-year-old girl was enough to fill the massive hole his wife's death had left in his chest. Victoria Hale had been lying to everyone else for the past 3 years, pretending she was the confident, unshakable CEO of Chicago's fastest-growing nonprofit, while secretly checking over her shoulder every single day, waiting for Damian Cross to decide he wasn't done punishing her yet. So when their mutual friends, Amanda and Josh, a couple who believed love could fix anything, set them up on a blind date, both Ryan and Victoria showed up with their armor on, ready to perform the role of person who has their life together for exactly 90 minutes before making a polite excuse and never speaking again. Ryan arrived first. He sat at the bar of Vertigo, a rooftop restaurant downtown where the cheapest cocktail cost $18 and the view of the Chicago skyline was supposedly worth the price. He'd worn his nicest jacket, the charcoal one his late wife Sarah had bought him for their 5th anniversary, back when they were young and stupid and thought they had forever. The bartender, a woman with perfect makeup and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, asked what he was drinking. "Just water for now," Ryan said, waiting for someone. She raised an eyebrow like he'd just admitted he couldn't read, but she brought him the water anyway, in a glass so fancy it probably cost more than his daughter's sneakers. Ryan checked his watch, 7:15. His date was supposed to arrive at 7:30, which meant he had 15 more minutes to consider faking a family emergency and getting the hell out of here. His phone buzzed. "Amanda, don't you dare bail. Victoria is perfect for you. Just be yourself." Ryan almost laughed. Be himself? Himself was a 32-year-old widower who spent his evenings helping his daughter with homework, running a design company he barely cared about anymore, and falling asleep on the couch watching cartoons he'd seen 40 times. What kind of successful, put-together woman would want that? But Amanda had been Sarah's best friend, and she'd been trying to set Ryan up for the past year with the kind of determination that made him tired just thinking about it. He'd said no 17 times. She'd finally worn him down by pointing out that his daughter Emma had started asking why Daddy didn't have a friend like other grown-ups did. That had hurt more than he wanted to admit. So here he was, sitting at a bar where the ambient lighting probably cost more than his car, waiting to disappoint another woman who deserved better than a man who still sometimes forgot his wife was gone. At exactly 7:30, Victoria Hale walked through the glass doors. Ryan recognized her immediately from the photo Amanda had shown him, though the picture hadn't quite captured the way she moved, like someone who'd been trained to take up space but wasn't entirely comfortable doing it. She was tall, probably 5'9", wearing a black dress that looked expensive but not flashy, her dark hair pulled back in a way that was professional without being severe. She was beautiful. Ryan hated that he noticed. She scanned the restaurant, and when her eyes landed on him, she smiled, but it was the kind of smile people used in business meetings, the kind that said, "I'm friendly," without saying, "I'm comfortable." Ryan stood up, suddenly aware that his jacket was nice, but not this place nice, that his shoes were scuffed, that he probably should have gotten a haircut. "Ryan?" Victoria asked, extending her hand. Her handshake was firm, practiced, the kind of handshake that came from years of proving you belonged in rooms full of men who assumed you didn't. "That's me," Ryan said. "Victoria, right?" "Guilty." She glanced around the restaurant, and for just a second something flickered across her face, anxiety maybe, or discomfort, before the professional smile snapped back into place. Amanda said you'd pick somewhere nice. She wasn't kidding. The hostess appeared like magic, all blonde hair and perfect teeth. Mr. Carter, your table is ready. They followed her through the restaurant, past couples who looked like they'd walked out of a magazine, past tables where the silverware alone probably cost more than Ryan's weekly grocery bill. The hostess led them to a corner table by the windows, where the view of the city stretched out like a promise neither of them believed in anymore. Your server will be right with you, the hostess said, leaving them alone with two leather-bound menus the size of textbooks. Victoria sat down, smoothing her dress in a gesture that seemed automatic. Ryan sat across from her, feeling like he was about to take a test he hadn't studied for. So, Victoria said, Amanda tells me you own a design company. Luxury Interiors, Ryan confirmed. Rich people pay me to make their houses look like other rich people's houses. Victoria laughed, and this time it sounded real. That's the most honest description of a job I've heard in years. What about you? Ryan asked, even though Amanda had already told him everything. CEO of Bright Futures Foundation, youngest person to ever hold the position, a woman who'd taken a struggling nonprofit and turned it into something that actually mattered. I run a foundation, Victoria said. We do educational programs, job training, community development, mostly for families who are, she paused, choosing her words carefully, for families who need a second chance. There was something in the way she said it, like she wasn't just talking about other people. Before Ryan could ask, a server appeared, young and eager in the way people are when they're working for tips that could pay their rent. Good evening, the server said. Can I start you both with something to drink? Perhaps a cocktail or a glass of wine from our sommelier's selection? Just water, Ryan said, the same thing he'd told the bartender. Victoria hesitated, then nodded. Water is fine. The server's smile didn't falter, but Ryan caught the disappointment. No alcohol meant a smaller bill, which meant a smaller tip. I'll give you a few minutes to look at the menu, the server said, disappearing back toward the kitchen. Ryan opened his menu and immediately regretted every decision that had led him to this moment. $48 for a steak, $65 for the sea bass, $32 for a salad. He could hear Sarah's voice in his head, the way she used to laugh at places like this. Baby, for $65, that fish better come back to life and sing me a song. Across the table, Victoria had gone very still. She was staring at the menu like it was written in a language she didn't speak, her professional composure starting to crack at the edges. Her jaw was tight. Her hands, which had been so steady when she shook his hand, were now gripping the leather binding just a little too hard. Ryan knew that look. It was the same look his sister had gotten last Christmas when their mom insisted on going to an expensive restaurant to celebrate. And his sister had to quietly confess she couldn't afford to split the bill, that she was barely making rent, that she'd only said yes because she didn't want to disappoint anyone. It was the look of someone doing math in their head and coming up short. Victoria looked up, and for just a second their eyes met. In that instant, Ryan saw something raw and honest beneath the CEO polish. Fear, embarrassment, and the desperate hope that he wouldn't notice. But he had noticed, and he had a choice. He could pretend he didn't see it, could order something expensive and watch her panic about whether to match him or admit she couldn't afford it. He could let her suffer through this meal, protecting her pride while destroying her bank account, or he could do what Sarah would have done. Ryan closed his menu. You know what? He said, keeping his voice casual. I'm not really feeling this place. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. What? It's too... Ryan gestured vaguely at the restaurant, at the couples in their designer clothes, at the view that was supposed to make up for the prices. I don't know, pretentious? My daughter would call it fancy boring. A small smile tugged at Victoria's lips. Fancy boring. She's 6. She has opinions. Ryan leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Amanda picked this place, and she means well, but she has terrible taste in restaurants. There's a taco truck 3 blocks from here that makes the best al pastor you'll ever eat, and the whole meal would cost less than one of these appetizers. Victoria stared at him, and Ryan couldn't quite read her expression. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she closed her menu. I thought I was the only one who noticed this place was ridiculous, she said quietly. Ryan felt something in his chest unclench. So, we're leaving? he asked. We're definitely leaving. They stood up at the same time. The server appeared out of nowhere, looking confused. Is everything all right? The server asked. Change of plans, Ryan said, pulling out his wallet and handing over a 20. For the water, keep the change. The server looked at the $20 bill like it was an insult, but Ryan was already walking toward the door, and Victoria was right behind him, and for the first time all night, both of them were smiling. The taco truck was called El Corazon, and it sat on a corner where the fancy part of downtown started turning into the real part of the city, where actual people lived and worked and couldn't afford $60 fish. Ryan ordered 4 tacos, 2 al pastor, 2 carnitas. Victoria ordered 3, all al pastor, and when Ryan tried to pay for both of them, she pulled out a $10 bill and refused to let him. I can buy my own tacos, she said, and there was something fierce in her voice that made Ryan step back and let her. They ate standing up at first, leaning against a brick wall under a streetlight that flickered every few seconds. The tacos were perfect, messy and cheap and real in a way the rooftop restaurant could never be. Oh my God, Victoria said around a mouthful of pork and pineapple. This is so much better than anything we would have gotten up there, right? Ryan grinned. My daughter and I come here sometimes after I pick her up from school. She always gets the chicken ones with extra lime. Victoria swallowed, wiped her mouth with a napkin that was too small for the job. Amanda mentioned you have a daughter. Emma, she's 6, going on 30. Ryan felt the familiar warmth that always came when he talked about his kid. She's with my mom tonight, probably conning her into letting her stay up past bedtime. What's she like? Stubborn, funny, asks about 8,000 questions a day. Ryan paused. She looks exactly like her mom. The words came out before he could stop them, and suddenly the air between them shifted, became heavier. Victoria's expression softened. Amanda told me about your wife. I'm sorry. Ryan nodded because that's what you did when people said they were sorry about Sarah. You nodded and changed the subject and pretended the grief wasn't still sitting in your chest like a weight you'd learned to carry, but never quite figured out how to put down. But Victoria didn't change the subject. How long has it been? She asked quietly. 4 years. Car accident. Ryan heard himself talking, which was strange because he usually didn't. She was driving home from visiting her sister. Drunk driver crossed the center line. She died before the ambulance got there. Jesus, Victoria whispered. Emma was 2. She doesn't really remember her mom, which somehow makes it worse. Ryan looked down at his half-eaten taco, suddenly not hungry anymore. I have all these memories, all these stories, and she just has pictures. It feels wrong. They stood there in silence for a moment, the sounds of the city filling the space between them. Cars passing, someone laughing from a nearby bar, the sizzle of meat on the taco truck's grill. Then Victoria said something Ryan didn't expect. My ex-boyfriend used to bring me to places like that restaurant, she said. The expensive ones. He'd make a big show of ordering the most expensive wine, the best table, everything. And then afterward, he'd remind me that I could never afford places like that on my own, that I should be grateful he was willing to spend money on someone like me. Ryan looked up. Victoria was staring at her taco like it held the answers to questions she didn't know how to ask. Someone like you? Ryan repeated. Someone who grew up poor. Someone who had to work 3 jobs to get through college. Someone who didn't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. Victoria's voice was flat, factual, like she was reading from a report. He made sure I never forgot that I didn't belong in his world, that he was doing me a favor by being with me. That's not... Ryan started, but Victoria kept talking. When we walked into that restaurant tonight, and I saw the menu, I had a panic attack. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. A literal panic attack. Because I did the math in my head, and I realized that if I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, I'd have about $40 left in my account until payday, and my car needs gas and I have bills due, and... She stopped, pressing her lips together like she'd said too much. I'm the CEO of a foundation, she continued, quieter now. I manage a budget of millions of dollars. I speak at conferences, I sit on boards, and I can't afford a $60 dinner without having a crisis about it. How pathetic is that? It's not pathetic, Ryan said. Victoria looked at him, and her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears, or might have been anger, or might have been both. You don't have to be nice to me, she said. We barely know each other. You can just... Victoria. Ryan said her name firmly enough that she stopped talking. It's not pathetic. You know what's pathetic? The fact that we live in a world where running a nonprofit foundation that actually helps people pays less than my job making rich people's houses prettier. That's pathetic. You're doing something that matters, and you're doing it while barely scraping by. And instead of anyone recognizing how messed up that is, you've got assholes like your ex making you feel bad about it. Victoria stared at him. Besides, Ryan added, I did the same math you did. I was looking at that menu thinking about how Emma needs new shoes, and the dishwasher at home is making a weird noise. And if I spent $60 on a steak, I'd feel guilty about it for a week. So if you're pathetic, then I'm pathetic too, and we can be pathetic together while eating these amazing tacos. For a long moment, Victoria didn't say anything. Then she laughed. It wasn't the professional laugh from the restaurant, or the polite laugh she'd probably used in 1,000 business meetings. It was a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep and honest, and it made her whole face change. Okay, she said, we're pathetic taco people together. Exactly. They finished eating, and then Victoria surprised him by suggesting they walk for a while. The night was warm for October, and the streets were busy with people heading to bars, to late dinners, to whatever else people did on Friday nights when they weren't on awkward blind dates that had turned into something else. They walked without any particular destination, just moving through the city, and somehow it felt easier to talk when they weren't looking directly at each other. Victoria told him about growing up in a town so small it didn't have a stoplight, about her mom working 2 jobs after her dad left, about getting a scholarship to Northwestern and feeling like an alien among all the rich kids who'd never had to worry about money. She told him about building her career, about the foundation, about how she'd met Damien at a fundraiser and thought he was charming until she realized charm was just the mask he wore over cruelty. He was so good at making it seem like love, Victoria said. The expensive gifts, the fancy dates, the way he'd introduce me to important people. I thought he was helping me, building me up. She shook her head. But he was actually just making sure I knew I needed him, that without him, I was nothing. How long were you together? Ryan asked. 3 years. I ended it 6 months ago. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself, even though the night wasn't cold. He didn't take it well. What do you mean? Victoria was quiet for so long that Ryan thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she said, he calls sometimes, late at night, just to remind me he's still there, still watching. He sends gifts to my office, expensive things I can't afford to send back. He donates to the foundation through shell companies, so his name shows up in our donor reports, and I have to thank him at board meetings. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. He wants me to know that he can still control parts of my life, that leaving him didn't mean I was free. Ryan felt something hot and sharp move through his chest. That's not okay. You know that, right? That's harassment, stalking. I know. Victoria's voice was tired. But he's careful. He never threatens me directly. He never does anything I could prove. And he's connected. He knows people on the foundation's board, people who could make my job very difficult if I made accusations I couldn't back up. So I just deal with it. You shouldn't have to deal with it. Yeah, well, Victoria gave him a sad smile. Life isn't fair. You know that better than anyone. They'd reached a small park, one of those pocket parks the city scattered around downtown, with a few benches and some trees that were stubbornly holding on to their leaves. Victoria sat down on one of the benches, and Ryan sat next to her, leaving a respectful distance between them. Amanda told you about Sarah, Ryan said. It wasn't a question. She did. She said you were raising Emma alone, that you'd built this successful business, but that you mostly just cared about being a good dad. Victoria looked at him. She said you were kind, that you'd been through hell but somehow came out of it still believing people were good. Ryan laughed, but it was bitter. I don't know about that last part. No, I believe people can be good. I believe Emma is good, and that she deserves a world that's better than this one. But believing the world is good? Ryan shook his head. I lost that when I had to explain to a 2-year-old why Mommy wasn't coming home. They sat in silence for a moment. I think that's what Damien took from me, Victoria said finally. The ability to believe people can be good. He was so charming at first, so perfect, and then he slowly became this monster, and I kept thinking I must have imagined the good parts, that I was stupid for ever trusting him. You weren't stupid, wasn't I? Victoria's voice cracked. I stayed for 3 years. 3 years of being made to feel small and worthless and grateful for scraps of affection. What kind of strong, successful woman does that? Ryan thought about the question, about all the easy answers he could give her, about how abuse was complicated, how love made people do irrational things, how strength wasn't about never falling down but about getting back up. But he didn't say any of those things. Instead, he said, "When Sarah died, I didn't cry for 3 weeks. Not once. I took care of Emma, I planned the funeral, I thanked people for their casseroles and their condolences, and I didn't shed a single tear. And then one night, I was putting Emma to bed, and she asked me when Mommy was coming back, and I finally told her the truth, that Mommy was never coming back. And Emma looked at me and said, 'Okay, Daddy,' just like that. 'Okay, Daddy.' Like she was trying to make me feel better about the worst thing that had ever happened to her." Ryan's throat felt tight. "And I went into my bedroom, and I cried so hard I thought I was going to break in half. I cried for hours. And when I finally stopped, I realized something. I hadn't cried before because I thought if I started, I'd never stop. I thought if I let myself feel how bad it was, I wouldn't be able to take care of Emma. I wouldn't be able to keep going." He looked at Victoria. "Maybe you stayed with him for 3 years because you thought if you admitted how bad it was, you wouldn't be able to keep going. Maybe you were just trying to survive." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, and this time they spilled over, running down her cheeks in the streetlight. "I'm tired of surviving," she whispered. "I want to actually live." Ryan didn't think about it. He just reached over and took her hand, and Victoria squeezed back so hard it almost hurt. They sat like that for a long time. Two people who'd been through different kinds of hell, holding on to each other in a park they'd probably never visit again. Eventually, Victoria wiped her eyes and laughed, shaky but real. "This is the weirdest first date I've ever been on," she said. "Same," Ryan grinned. "Usually I at least make it to dessert before trauma dumping my entire life story. I skipped straight to the main course. Very efficient. I respect that." Victoria smiled and then her phone buzzed. She checked it, and something in her expression shifted, just for a second, a flash of fear before she controlled it. "Everything okay?" Ryan asked. "Yeah, just work thing." Victoria put her phone away, but her hand was shaking slightly. "I should probably get going. Early meeting tomorrow." Ryan didn't believe her, but he didn't push. "Can I walk you to your car?" "I took the train." "Then can I walk you to the station?" Victoria hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, that'd be nice." They walked back through the city, their hands not quite touching, but close enough that Ryan could feel the warmth of her skin. The conversation turned lighter. Victoria told him about a disastrous foundation event where the caterer had mixed up the main courses and served fish to a room full of vegetarians. And Ryan told her about the time Emma had convinced his entire design team that she was the assistant boss and started giving them assignments in crayon. By the time they reached the train station, Ryan didn't want the night to end. "So," Victoria said, stopping at the entrance. "This was weird," Ryan offered. "I was going to say unexpected." She smiled. "Good, but unexpected. Can I see you again?" The words came out before Ryan could second-guess them. Victoria's smile faltered. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Because of your ex?" "Because of a lot of things." Victoria looked down. "I'm kind of a mess, Ryan. Like, objectively, I can barely afford rent. I'm being harassed by my ex-boyfriend, and I'm running a foundation that's perpetually one bad quarter away from bankruptcy. You seem like you have your life together." "I fall asleep on the couch 3 nights a week because I'm too tired to make it to my bed," Ryan interrupted. "I haven't been on a date in 4 years because I was convinced no one would want a widower with a kid. I still sometimes set the table for 3 people because I forget Sarah's gone. I'm a mess too, Victoria. We can be messes together." Victoria looked up at him, and for a moment Ryan thought she was going to say no. Then she said, "Okay. Okay. Okay, let's be messes together." Victoria pulled out her phone. "Give me your number, but I'm warning you, I'm terrible at texting back. Emma's been teaching me to use emojis. I'll wear you down with persistence and tiny pictures of tacos." Victoria laughed, and they exchanged numbers, and when she got on the train, she turned back and waved at him through the window. Ryan waved back, feeling something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. He didn't see the man watching them from across the street, didn't see the expensive car idling at the curb, or the way the man in the driver's seat was gripping his phone so hard his knuckles were white. Didn't see Damian Cross taking photos of them together, his face twisted with rage. But Victoria did. She saw him through the train window as it pulled away from the station, and her stomach dropped. The hope she'd felt 30 seconds ago turned to ice, because she knew what was coming. She'd left Damian, but he'd never really let her go. And now he knew about Ryan. Victoria pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened her messages. There was a new text from an unknown number. Unknown. I see you found someone new. How sweet. Does he know what a charity case you are? Does he know you're only pretending to be something you're not? Another message came through. Unknown. End it now, or I'll make sure he finds out who you really are. And I'll make sure your precious foundation finds out what you've been hiding. Victoria's vision blurred. What she'd been hiding, the things she'd never told anyone at the foundation, the secret that Damian had discovered and held over her head for years, the real reason her ex had so much power. She'd lied on her resume when she'd applied for the CEO position. Just one small lie. She'd claimed to have a graduate degree she'd never actually finished because she'd had to drop out when her mom got sick and she'd needed to work full-time to pay the medical bills. It was a stupid lie. The kind of thing that shouldn't matter when she'd proven she could do the job, but it was also the kind of lie that could get her fired immediately, that could destroy her credibility, ruin her career, make it impossible for her to ever work in the nonprofit sector again. Damian knew, and now he was going to use it to destroy the only good thing that had happened to her in years. Victoria closed her eyes and tried not to cry. She'd been so stupid to think she could have something normal, something good. People like her didn't get happy endings. They just got survival, and now even that was being threatened. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay in her apartment, a studio in a neighborhood that was technically safe but definitely not nice, staring at her phone like it was a bomb that might go off at any second. The messages from Damian kept coming, one after another, each one a little more threatening than the last. Unknown. Did you really think you could just move on after everything I did for you? Unknown. He seems nice. Ryan Carter, right? Runs Carter Design Group, has a daughter named Emma, lives at 2847 Maple Street. I know everything, Victoria. Unknown. You have 48 hours to end it, or I start making phone calls. Victoria's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. He'd found Ryan's address. He knew about Emma. The thought made her physically ill. She dealt with Damian's harassment for 6 months, the late-night calls, the unwanted gifts, the way he showed up at foundation events with whatever 20-something he was dating that week, making sure Victoria saw him, saw what she'd given up. But this was different. Before, his focus had been on making her miserable. Now, he wanted to destroy her. And he would. She knew he would. At 3 a.m, Victoria finally gave up on sleep. She made coffee she didn't drink and watched the sun come up through her single window, trying to figure out what to do. She could tell Ryan, explain the whole mess, the lie on her resume, Damian's blackmail, the impossible situation she was in. But they'd been on one date, one weird, wonderful, completely honest date, and now she was supposed to dump all of this on him? Hi, remember me? The woman who cried in the park? Turns out I'm also being stalked by my ex. And oh, by the way, my entire career is built on a lie that could blow up at any moment. No, she couldn't do that to him. He'd been through enough. She could ignore Damian, call his bluff. But that wasn't a bluff. She knew him well enough to know he'd follow through. He'd tell the foundation board about her fake degree, and she'd be fired within a week. Then he'd probably go after Ryan, too, just because he could. Just to prove he still had power over her. Or she could do what Damian wanted. End things with Ryan before they'd really started. Send some polite text about how she'd had a nice time, but didn't think they were compatible. Protect Ryan and Emma from getting caught in the crossfire of her mess of a life. That was the smart choice. The safe choice. The choice that made Victoria want to throw up. Her phone buzzed with a new message, and her whole body tensed, but it wasn't from Damian. Ryan. Morning. Emma wants to know if you like dinosaurs. This is apparently very important information. Victoria stared at the message. It was so normal, so sweet, so completely opposite of the nightmare text she'd been getting all night. Another message came through before she could respond. Ryan. For the record, the correct answer is yes. Specifically, you should like Parasaurolophus because it has a cool head thing. Emma's words, not mine. Despite everything, Victoria smiled. Then she started typing. Victoria. I do like dinosaurs. Parasaurolophus is definitely in my top 5. The response came back almost immediately. Ryan. Emma approves. You've passed the first test. There will be more tests. She's very thorough. Victoria. I can handle thorough. Ryan. Can you handle coffee? I know it's last minute, but Emma's at her grandmother's until noon, and I thought maybe... Victoria's smile faded. She looked at the threatening messages from Damien, still glowing on her screen. She should say no, should end this now, before anyone got hurt. But she was so tired of letting Damien control her life. Victoria. Yes. Where? They met at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, the kind of place that was busy enough to feel anonymous but quiet enough to actually talk. Ryan was already there when Victoria arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee and what looked like a very serious newspaper he clearly wasn't reading. He looked up when she walked in, and his whole face changed. The nervous tension melted into something warm and real, and Victoria felt her chest tighten. She was going to hurt this man. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Because that's what she did. She hurt people who got too close. Hey, Ryan said, standing up like he wasn't sure if he should hug her or shake her hand or just wave awkwardly. Hey, Victoria said, and before she could overthink it, she hugged him. It was brief, friendly, the kind of hug you might give a coworker, but Ryan smelled like coffee and something clean and woodsy, and for just a second, Victoria let herself pretend this was normal, that she was normal. They sat down, and Ryan pushed one of the coffees toward her. I didn't know how you take it, so I got it black and brought all the sugar and cream packets they had. Black is perfect, liar. Nobody actually likes black coffee. We just pretend to because it makes us seem tough. Victoria laughed, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. Okay, fine. Maybe a little sugar. She dumped 2 packets into her cup while Ryan watched with a knowing smile. So, Ryan said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how awkward is a second date less than 12 hours after the first date? Probably a 9? Victoria stirred her coffee. But I like awkward. Awkward is honest. Good, because I'm about to make it more awkward. Ryan leaned forward. I had a really good time last night. Like, embarrassingly good. I went home and told Emma all about it, and she asked if you were going to be my girlfriend, and I had to explain that's not how adult relationships work, but honestly, I'm not sure I even know how adult relationships work anymore. Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. I had a good time too. But? No buts. The lie came easily. Too easily. Ryan studied her for a moment, and Victoria had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her. You seem tired, he said finally. Bad night? Couldn't sleep. That at least was true. Want to talk about it? Victoria opened her mouth to say no, to change the subject, to keep all her problems locked up where they belonged. But then she thought about what Ryan had said last night, about how they could be messes together. My ex texted me, she said quietly. After I left you at the train station, he saw us together. Ryan's expression darkened. What did he say? Victoria pulled out her phone, hesitated, then showed him the messages. All of them. Ryan read through them slowly, and with each message his jaw got tighter. When he finished, he looked up at her with something fierce in his eyes. This is stalking, Victoria. This is criminal harassment. You need to call the police. And say what? He hasn't actually threatened me. He hasn't said he's going to hurt me. He's just... He found my address, Ryan interrupted. He knows where I live, where my daughter lives. That's not nothing. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. I know, I'm sorry. I should have warned you before we went out that I come with complications. Everyone comes with complications. Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. But this isn't complications. This is a dangerous person trying to control you. You can't just ignore it. I'm not ignoring it. Victoria pulled her hand back, wrapping both arms around herself. I'm dealing with it the only way I know how, which is ending this, us, whatever this is. The words felt like glass in her throat. That's what he wants, and if I don't give it to him, he's going to make things much worse. Ryan stared at her. You're going to let him win? I'm going to protect you and your daughter from getting dragged into my mess. Victoria's voice came out sharper than she intended, and a couple at a nearby table glanced over. She lowered her voice. You have a kid, Ryan, a 6-year-old who needs you. What happens when Damien decides to escalate? When he shows up at your house or your daughter's school? When he decides the best way to hurt me is to hurt the people I care about? So your solution is to just give up? To let this asshole dictate who you can and can't see? My solution is to not drag innocent people into my problems. Victoria was standing now, though she didn't remember deciding to stand. You're a good person, Ryan. You deserve someone who doesn't. She couldn't finish the sentence. Ryan stood too. Someone who isn't what? Someone who doesn't have an abusive ex? Someone who doesn't have problems? Victoria, we all have problems. That's not a reason to... He knows about the degree, Victoria blurted out. Ryan stopped. What? Victoria sat back down heavily. She felt like all the air had left her body. When I applied for the CEO position at Bright Futures, I said I had a master's degree in nonprofit management from Northwestern. But I don't. I dropped out halfway through because my mom got cancer and I needed to work full-time to help pay her medical bills. I was going to finish it later, but then the foundation job came up and I thought if I could just get my foot in the door, if I could prove I could do the work, the degree wouldn't matter. She looked up at Ryan, expecting to see disappointment or disgust. Instead, she saw understanding. And Damien found out, Ryan said quietly. Victoria nodded. About a year into our relationship, he was so nice about it at first. Said it didn't matter, that I was clearly qualified, that it was just a technicality. But then whenever we'd fight, he'd bring it up. Remind me that he could tell the board any time he wanted, that my whole career was built on a lie. She laughed bitterly. And the worst part? He was right. It is a lie. I am a fraud. You're not a fraud. I lied on my resume, Ryan. That's literally the definition of... You're not a fraud, Ryan repeated, more firmly this time. You've been running that foundation for how long? 3 years? And in those 3 years, how many families have you helped? How many programs have you built? How much money have you raised? That's not the point, Huck. That's exactly the point. Ryan leaned forward. You've proven you can do the job. You've proven you're qualified. The degree is just a piece of paper that says someone else thinks you're smart enough to do work you've already been doing successfully for 3 years. The only fraud here is the system that values a piece of paper over actual results. Victoria wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt. The board won't see it that way, she said. When Damien tells them, and he will tell them if I don't do what he wants, they'll fire me immediately. They'll have to, for liability reasons if nothing else. And then I'll be unemployed with a reputation for lying, and I'll never work in this field again. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. What if you told them first? He said finally. Victoria blinked. What? What if you went to the board yourself and explained the situation? Told them about the degree, about Damien's blackmail, all of it. Take away his power before he can use it. That's... Victoria shook her head. That's insane. That's career suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only way to actually be free of him. Ryan's eyes were intense. Right now, you're living in fear of what he might do. Every decision you make is based on trying to keep him happy, trying to keep him quiet. That's not living, Victoria. That's just a different kind of prison. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I could lose everything, she whispered. You could, but you might not. And even if you do, even if the worst happens and they fire you, at least you'd be free. At least you could start over without someone holding the past over your head. I don't know if I'm brave enough for that. Ryan smiled, sad and understanding. You're brave enough to run a foundation that helps hundreds of people. You're brave enough to leave an abusive relationship. You're brave enough to show up for a blind date and admit you can't afford the menu. You're a lot braver than you think. Victoria's phone buzzed. Another message from Damien. Unknown. Tick-tock, Victoria. 36 hours left. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at Ryan. If I do this, if I tell the board, will you be there? The question came out smaller than she intended. I know that's asking a lot. We barely know each other. But I don't think I can do this alone. Ryan didn't hesitate. I'll be there. Even though it's crazy, even though I might be throwing away my career for nothing, Even though Ryan reached across the table and took her hand again. But for the record, I don't think it's for nothing. I think it's for your freedom. And that's worth everything. Victoria felt tears spill down her cheeks, and she didn't bother wiping them away. I'm going to lose my job, she said. Maybe. I'm going to have to start over. Probably. I'm going to be broke and unemployed, and my mom is going to be so disappointed. Your mom is going to be proud of you for standing up for yourself. Ryan squeezed her hand. And for what it's worth, I'm already proud of you. Victoria laughed through her tears. We've been on 1.5 dates. You don't know me well enough to be proud of me. I know you well enough to know you're someone worth being proud of. They sat there in the coffee shop, holding hands across a table scattered with sugar packets and napkins, and Victoria made a decision. She was going to tell the truth. She was going to call Damien's bluff. She was going to stop being afraid. It was possibly the stupidest decision she'd ever made, but it was hers. The board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Victoria spent the entire weekend preparing, writing, and rewriting her resignation letter because she figured she might as well have it ready, practicing what she was going to say, trying to figure out how to explain 3 years of lying without sounding like exactly the kind of person who shouldn't be running a nonprofit. Ryan texted her throughout the weekend, nothing heavy, just little messages that made her smile. Pictures of Emma's latest art project, a drawing of a dinosaur that looked more like a confused potato. A photo of the tacos from El Corazon with the caption, "Thinking of you." A stupid joke about accountants that wasn't even funny, but made Victoria laugh anyway because the alternative was spiraling into panic. On Sunday night, her phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call from an unknown number. Victoria knew who it was before she answered. Hello, Damien? Victoria. His voice was smooth, cultured, the same voice that had once made her feel safe and now made her skin crawl. I haven't heard from you. I assume that means you've made the right decision? Actually, I've made a decision. I'm just not sure you're going to think it's the right one. There was a pause. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done letting you control my life. Victoria's voice was steadier than she felt. I'm telling the board about the degree tomorrow. All of it, the lie, your blackmail, everything. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then Damien laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. You're bluffing, he said. You're too smart to commit career suicide over some guy you just met. Maybe I'm not as smart as you think. Victoria, listen to me very carefully. Damien's voice dropped, became harder. If you do this, I will make sure you never work in Chicago again. I will tell everyone in the nonprofit sector that you're a liar and a fraud. I will make your life hell. You're already making my life hell, Victoria said quietly. At least this way I get to choose how it happens. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. She hung up before he could respond, and then she blocked the number. Her hands were shaking, her heart was racing, and she felt like she might throw up, but she also felt something else. Relief. For the first time in 3 years, she'd told Damien no. And the world hadn't ended. Not yet, anyway. Monday morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. Victoria put on her best suit, the one she'd bought at a consignment shop, but looked expensive enough to pass, and practiced her speech one more time in the mirror. She looked tired, scared, like someone who was about to blow up her entire life, which, to be fair, she was. Ryan met her outside the Foundation's office building at 8:30, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said, handing her one. I'm already so anxious I might vibrate out of my skin, Victoria said. Coffee is probably a bad idea. It's decaf. Oh. Victoria felt something warm bloom in her chest. Thank you. They stood outside for a moment, watching people rush past on their way to jobs they probably hated, but at least got to keep. You don't have to do this, Ryan said quietly. I know I said you should, but if you've changed your mind, I haven't changed my mind. Victoria took a sip of coffee. It was sweet, the way she liked it. I'm terrified, but I haven't changed my mind. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Even if I lose everything? Even then. Ryan looked at her, and his eyes were steady. Because at least you'll lose it on your own terms, and that's worth something. Victoria nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. The board meeting started at 9. Victoria sat at the head of the conference table, surrounded by 8 people who had no idea their Monday morning was about to get very complicated. There was Margaret Chen, the board chair, a retired executive who ran the foundation like a benevolent dictator. James Sullivan, a lawyer who loved rules almost as much as he loved hearing himself talk. Patricia Okoye, a community organizer who actually cared about the work they did. And 5 others whose names Victoria knew, but whose faces had started to blur together in her panic. Ryan sat in the back of the room, in one of the chairs reserved for observers. He'd asked if she wanted him there, and she'd said yes before she could second-guess it. "All right," Margaret said, calling the meeting to order. "We have a full agenda this morning. Victoria, you wanted to address the board before we get started?" Victoria stood up. Her legs felt like water. "Yes, thank you." She gripped the edge of the table. "I need to tell you all something, and I need you to hear the whole story before you make any decisions." Margaret's eyebrows went up. "That sounds ominous." "It is." Victoria took a breath. 3 years ago, when I applied for the CEO position, I lied on my resume. I said I had a master's degree in nonprofit management from Northwestern. I don't have that degree. I never finished it. The room went very quiet. "I was halfway through the program when my mother was diagnosed with cancer," Victoria continued. Her voice was shaking now, but she pushed through. "I had to drop out to work full-time to help pay her medical bills. I always planned to go back and finish, but then this position opened up, and I thought if I could just get my foot in the door, if I could prove I could do the work, the degree wouldn't matter." James leaned forward. "Are you telling us that your employment here is based on fraudulent credentials?" "Yes." The word felt like swallowing glass. "I'm telling you that I lied to get this job. And I'm telling you because someone has been using that lie to blackmail me." That got everyone's attention. For the next 20 minutes, Victoria laid it all out. Her relationship with Damien, the way he'd discovered her secret and held it over her head, the escalating harassment since she'd left him, the threats he'd made about Ryan, the ultimatum. When she finished, the room was silent except for the sound of the air conditioning and Patricia's pen tapping against her notepad. Finally, Margaret spoke. "Let me see if I understand this correctly. You lied on your resume 3 years ago about having a degree. Your ex-boyfriend discovered this lie and has been blackmailing you with it, and rather than allow him to continue controlling you, you've decided to come clean and accept the consequences." "Yes." Victoria's throat was dry. "I know this means I'll need to resign. I've already prepared—" "Who said anything about resigning?" Margaret interrupted. Victoria blinked. What? You lied about a degree." Margaret shrugged. "That's not great, but it's also not the end of the world. What have you accomplished in the 3 years since you started?" Victoria felt like she'd missed a step going downstairs. We've expanded our programs from 3 to 12. We've increased our annual budget from $2 million to $6 million. We've served over 5,000 families. So you've proven you can do the job," Margaret said. "Degree or no degree." "But I lied," Victoria said. "I committed fraud. We don't have to do anything," Patricia cut in. She was smiling, which was not the reaction Victoria had expected. "What we should do is figure out how to handle this properly, starting with dealing with this Damien person." James cleared his throat. "I think we need to consult with legal counsel before we make any decisions about Victoria's employment status. But Patricia's right. The immediate concern is the harassment and blackmail. That's a criminal matter." "I don't want to press charges," Victoria said quickly. "He's well connected. And if this becomes public—" "It's already public," Margaret said gently. "You just told a room full of people. And before this meeting ends, I'm going to call our attorney, who will advise us that we need to report the blackmail to the police. You don't get a choice about that anymore, Victoria. This is bigger than just you now." Victoria felt her knees buckle. She sat down hard in her chair. "I don't understand," she said. "Why aren't you firing me?" Margaret sighed. 20 years ago, I lied on my resume too. Said I had an MBA when I'd only finished 3/4 of the program. I eventually went back and got the degree, but for 5 years, I was running a company based on credentials I didn't actually have." She looked around the table. "Anyone else want to confess something?" To Victoria's shock, 3 other board members raised their hands. "Embellished my job title at a previous company," one admitted. "Said I was fluent in Spanish when I could barely order a taco," another said. "Lied about my age for 15 years, Patricia added with a grin. Margaret turned back to Victoria. We're all human. We all make mistakes. The question is whether you've learned from this one and whether you're valuable enough to the organization to keep around despite it. I have learned, Victoria said. Her voice was barely a whisper. And I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I can go back to school, finish the degree. That would be good, James said. From a liability standpoint, we should have documentation showing that we're addressing the discrepancy. But Victoria, I want to be clear, nobody in this room thinks you're a fraud. You've done exceptional work. This is just a formality. Victoria couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. Ryan caught her eye from the back of the room. He was smiling and he gave her a small thumbs up. The meeting continued for another hour. They discussed how to handle Damien, restraining order, police report, removing him from the donor rolls. They discussed Victoria's path to completing her degree. They discussed a lot of things that Victoria only half heard because her brain was still stuck on the fact that she wasn't fired. She wasn't fired. She told the truth, and she wasn't fired. When the meeting finally ended, Margaret pulled Victoria aside. That took courage, she said quietly. What you did today. Most people would have kept lying, kept hiding, kept letting someone like Damien control them. You chose differently. I had help, Victoria said, glancing at Ryan. Margaret followed her gaze. The gentleman in the back? We just started dating. It's new. Margaret smiled. Well, anyone who shows up to a board meeting to support someone they just started dating is either very serious or very stupid. And he doesn't look stupid. Victoria laughed, and it came out a little hysterical. I still can't believe you didn't fire me. I've been in this business for 30 years, Margaret said. You know what I've learned? The best leaders aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who own their mistakes and do better. You just proved you're that kind of leader. Don't make me regret keeping you. I won't, I promise. Margaret patted her shoulder and headed out, followed by the other board members. Soon, it was just Victoria and Ryan left in the conference room. Victoria walked over to him on legs that still felt unsteady. So, Ryan said, you survived. I survived. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes again. I can't believe I survived. I can. Ryan stood up and pulled her into a hug, and this time, Victoria didn't hold back. She wrapped her arms around him and held on tight, breathing in the coffee and wood smell of him, letting herself feel safe for the first time in years. Thank you, she whispered into his shoulder, for being here, for believing I could do this. You did it yourself, Ryan said. I just showed up. Showing up matters. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in an empty conference room. Two people who'd started as strangers less than a week ago and had somehow become something else, something that felt like it might be real. Victoria's phone buzzed. She pulled back to check it, tensing automatically. But it wasn't Damien. It was her mom. Mom, just wanted to say I love you, sweetheart. Whatever you're dealing with today, you've got this. Victoria smiled through her tears. Maybe she did have this. Maybe, for the first time in a long time, everything was going to be okay. Outside the conference room window, Chicago stretched out in the October sunlight, and Victoria let herself believe in second chances. The relief lasted exactly 48 hours. On Wednesday afternoon, Victoria was in her office reviewing grant applications when her assistant Jenny knocked on the doorframe, her face pale. There's someone here to see you, Jenny said quietly. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. Victoria's stomach dropped. Who is it? Damien Cross. The name hit Victoria like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of her desk to keep her hands from shaking. Tell him I'm not available. I did. He said he'd wait. He's been sitting in the lobby for 20 minutes. Jenny hesitated. Should I call security? Victoria wanted to say yes, wanted to have him thrown out of the building, get a restraining order, never see his face again. But she also knew Damien. If she refused to see him now, he'd just escalate. Show up at her apartment, ambush her somewhere public, make a scene designed to humiliate her. Better to face him here, in her office, on her terms. It's fine, Victoria said, though it wasn't fine at all. Give me 5 minutes, then send him in. Jenny looked doubtful, but nodded and disappeared. Victoria pulled out her phone and texted Ryan. Victoria. Damien's here at my office. Don't worry, I'm okay, just wanted someone to know. The response came back almost immediately. Ryan, do you want me to come over? No, I need to handle this myself, but thank you. Ryan, text me when he leaves. If I don't hear from you in 30 minutes, I'm calling the police. Victoria smiled despite her fear. 3 weeks ago, she'd been alone. Now she had someone who noticed when she didn't text back. She straightened her jacket, took a deep breath, and waited. When Damien walked into her office, he looked exactly the same as he had 6 months ago. Tall, handsome in that polished corporate way, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Victoria's rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his smile was perfectly practiced, and his eyes were perfectly cold. "Victoria," he said, like they were old friends running into each other at a coffee shop. "You look well." "What do you want, Damien?" He sat down in the chair across from her desk without being invited, crossing his legs like he owned the place. Like he owned her. "I heard you had an interesting board meeting on Monday," he said. "Cleared your conscience, told them all about your little secret. Very brave." Victoria's jaw tightened. "How did you—" "I still have friends on the board, people who keep me informed." Damien smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "I was surprised they didn't fire you. Disappointed, actually. I thought for sure Margaret would have more sense than to keep a liar on staff." "Margaret has more sense than to take advice from a stalker." Victoria kept her voice level. "You need to leave. I'm a donor to this foundation, a very generous donor. I have every right to be here." "You lost that right when you started blackmailing me." Damien's smile faded. "I never blackmailed you. I simply pointed out facts. If you interpreted that as a threat, that's your problem. You sent me dozens of messages telling me to end my relationship or you'd expose me. That's textbook blackmail." "Prove it." Damien leaned back in his chair. "Oh, wait, you can't, because I've already deleted all those messages from my phone, and the number I texted from, burner phone, long gone." Victoria felt ice spread through her veins. Of course he'd covered his tracks. Damien was too smart to leave evidence. "Get out of my office," she said. "I'll leave when I'm ready." Damien's voice dropped, became harder. "You think you won, don't you? You told the truth, kept your job, got your little boyfriend to play hero, but you didn't win, Victoria. You just delayed the inevitable." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm not done with you." Damien stood up, and Victoria instinctively pushed her chair back, putting more distance between them. "You embarrassed me. You made me look like a fool, and nobody does that to me without consequences." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm simply stating facts." Damien walked to the door, then paused. "You should tell your boyfriend to be careful, by the way. Accidents happen, especially to people who don't pay attention to their surroundings." Victoria's blood ran cold. "Stay away from Ryan. Stay away from his daughter. If you go anywhere near them—" "You'll what?" Damien turned back and his eyes were dead. "Call the police? With what evidence? File a restraining order based on a conversation that's just your word against mine?" He smiled. "You're not as smart as you think you are, Victoria. You never were." He left without another word, and Victoria sat frozen at her desk, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might be sick. She grabbed her phone and called Ryan. He answered on the first ring. "Are you okay?" he asked immediately. "No." Victoria's voice was shaking. "He threatened you and Emma. He said accidents happen to people who don't pay attention." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "I'm coming to get you." "Ryan, I'm at work." "I don't care. Pack up your stuff. We're going to the police station right now." He covered his tracks. He deleted all the messages. It's my word against his, and he's— "I don't care," Ryan said again, and there was steel in his voice. "We're filing a report anyway. We're creating a paper trail, and then we're getting you a restraining order, evidence or no evidence." Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to explain all the reasons it wouldn't work, all the ways Damien would slip through the legal system like he always did. But she was tired of being afraid, tired of letting him win. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll be ready in 10 minutes." The police station smelled like coffee and floor cleaner and desperation. Victoria sat in a hard plastic chair, filling out forms while Ryan stood next to her like a guard dog, his jaw tight. The officer who took their statement was a woman in her 40s named Detective Lisa Chen, and she listened to Victoria's story with an expression that said she'd heard versions of this 1,000 times before. "The problem," Detective Chen said when Victoria finished, is that everything you're describing is harassment, but it's not quite crossing the line into something we can arrest him for. The messages are gone. The in-person conversation had no witnesses. He hasn't physically threatened you or damaged your property. So there's nothing you can do? Ryan asked, and his voice was sharp with frustration. I didn't say that. Detective Chen leaned back in her chair. I said we can't arrest him right now, but we can file a report, which creates a record. We can help you apply for an order of protection, which might not stop him, but at least makes it clear you want him to stay away. And if he violates that order, then we can arrest him. So we just wait for him to do something worse? Victoria felt tears of frustration burning her eyes. We wait until he actually hurts someone? Detective Chen's expression softened. I know this isn't what you want to hear. I know it feels like we're not taking this seriously, but the law requires evidence, and right now you don't have enough. She paused. However, I'm going to give you some advice. Document everything. Every time he contacts you, shows up somewhere you are, sends you something. Screenshot it, photograph it, write it down with dates and times. Build your case. And if he escalates, if he makes any direct threats, if he touches you, if he damages your property, you call 911 immediately. Victoria nodded numbly. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. They left the police station an hour later with a case number and a stack of papers about how to apply for an order of protection. Victoria felt hollowed out, exhausted. I need to pick up Emma from school, Ryan said, checking his watch. Do you want to come with me? You probably shouldn't be alone right now. Victoria started to say no, started to insist she was fine, but the truth was, she didn't want to be alone. Didn't want to go back to her empty apartment and stare at her phone waiting for Damien's next move. Are you sure? She asked. I don't want to. I mean, Emma doesn't even know me. This might be weird for her. Emma knows exactly who you are. I've told her all about you. Ryan smiled, and some of the tension in Victoria's chest eased. She's been asking when she gets to meet the dinosaur lady. Despite everything, Victoria laughed. The dinosaur lady? You passed the Parasaurolophus test. You're basically famous in our house now. They drove to Emma's school in Ryan's car, a sensible sedan with a car seat in the back and crayon marks on the upholstery. The elementary school was brick and cheerful, with colorful artwork taped to every window and a playground where kids were screaming with the particular brand of chaos that only 6-year-olds could achieve. Ryan parked near the pickup lane, and within minutes, kids started pouring out of the building. Victoria spotted Emma immediately. She looked just like Ryan, with the same dark hair and serious eyes, though her face was rounder, still holding on to the softness of childhood. Emma saw Ryan and lit up, running toward the car with a backpack that looked twice her size bouncing against her shoulders. Then she saw Victoria in the passenger seat and stopped dead. Who's that? Emma asked as Ryan opened the back door for her. This is my friend Victoria, Ryan said, helping Emma with her backpack. Remember? I told you about her. Emma climbed into her car seat, studying Victoria with the intense, unblinking stare that only children could pull off. You're the one who likes dinosaurs, Emma said finally. Guilty, Victoria said, turning in her seat to face her. Your dad told me Parasaurolophus is the best one. It is the best one. It has the cool head thing. Emma buckled her seatbelt with the confidence of someone who'd done it 1,000,000 times. But Daddy said it wrong. It's not Parasaurolophus, it's Parasaurolophus. Victoria bit back a smile. My mistake. Parasaurolophus. That's better. Emma pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her backpack. I drew you a picture. Daddy said you were sad, and pictures make people not sad. Victoria took the paper. It was a crayon drawing of what was presumably a dinosaur, though it looked more like a green blob with legs and the aforementioned cool head thing. In the corner, Emma had written, for Victoria, in wobbly letters. Something in Victoria's chest cracked open. This is the best picture I've ever seen, she said, and her voice was thick with emotion she hadn't expected. Can I keep it? Yeah, but you have to put it on your fridge. That's what you do with good pictures. Deal. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer and immediately launched into a detailed account of her day, something about a boy named Marcus who ate paste, and a girl named Sophie who could do a cartwheel but not a handstand, and how they'd learned about the letter Q in class even though everybody already knew what Q was, so it was kind of boring. Ryan drove while Emma talked, occasionally catching Victoria's eye in the rearview mirror and smiling. And for a moment, sitting in this car with this man and his chatty daughter who'd drawn her a picture, Victoria forgot about Damien, forgot about being afraid, forgot about everything except the strange, unexpected warmth of feeling like she belonged somewhere. They went to Ryan's house, a small two-story in a neighborhood that was family-friendly without being fancy. The house was exactly what Victoria expected, lived in and comfortable, with toys scattered in the living room and drawings stuck to the fridge with magnets, and a general sense of organized chaos that came from raising a kid alone. "Sorry about the mess," Ryan said, kicking aside a stuffed unicorn. "We weren't expecting company." "It's perfect," Victoria said, and she meant it. Emma gave Victoria a tour of the important parts of the house. Her room, where she had approximately 8,000 stuffed animals, the kitchen, where the good snacks were kept, and the backyard, where there was a swing set that Emma announced she could swing higher than anyone in the whole world. "Can you push me?" Emma asked Victoria, already running toward the swings. Victoria glanced at Ryan, who nodded encouragingly. She followed Emma outside and pushed her on the swing, while Emma shrieked with delight and demanded to go higher, higher, higher. And for the first time in days, Victoria felt something like peace settle over her. Inside the house, Ryan watched them through the kitchen window while he made dinner, chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, the staples of single-dad cuisine. He'd been terrified to introduce Victoria to Emma, worried it was too soon, worried Emma would hate her, worried he was making a mistake by letting someone new into their carefully constructed world. But watching Victoria push his daughter on the swing, both of them laughing, he thought maybe this wasn't a mistake at all. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Ryan's stomach tightened. He opened it. Unknown. "Nice house. Your daughter is beautiful. It would be a shame if something happened to her." The phone nearly slipped from Ryan's hand. He looked outside, scanning the street for anything unusual. Nothing. Just parked cars and neighbors coming home from work and kids riding bikes. But Damien had been here. Was maybe still here. Watching. Ryan's first instinct was to call the police. But what would he tell them? "Someone sent me a threatening text from an unknown number?" They'd say the same thing Detective Chen had said. Document it, add it to the report, hope it builds into something actionable. His second instinct was to grab Emma and Victoria and lock all the doors and never let either of them out of his sight again. But he couldn't live like that. Couldn't let fear control every decision. So instead, Ryan took a screenshot of the message, forwarded it to Detective Chen with a brief explanation, and then blocked the number. He went to the front door and locked it, checked the back door, drew the curtains. Then he went outside, keeping his voice light and normal. "Dinner's almost ready," he called. Emma jumped off the swing. "Can Victoria stay for dinner?" Ryan looked at Victoria, who looked uncertain. "Please?" Emma added. "We're having chicken nuggets, the dinosaur-shaped kind." Victoria smiled. "How could I say no to dinosaur nuggets?" They ate dinner at the kitchen table, and Emma dominated the conversation, asking Victoria approximately 1,000,000 questions. What was her favorite color? Did she have any pets? Had she ever seen a real dinosaur skeleton? Did she know that sharks were older than trees? Could she do a cartwheel? Victoria answered each question patiently, and Ryan watched the way she looked at Emma, like his daughter was the most interesting person in the world. Not like someone who was tolerating a kid to impress the parent, but like someone who genuinely enjoyed being here. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Victoria her dinosaur books, and they sat on the living room floor while Emma explained in great detail which dinosaurs were herbivores and which were carnivores, and why the T-Rex was overrated and Spinosaurus was actually cooler. Ryan cleaned up the kitchen and tried not to think about the text message, tried not to think about Damien watching his house, his daughter. His phone buzzed again. Detective Chen. "Got your message. Adding it to the file. I recommend installing security cameras on your property, ASAP. And if you see anyone suspicious, call 911 immediately." Ryan typed back a quick thank you and then started researching security cameras on his phone. He found a system he could install himself, ordered it with overnight shipping. It wasn't enough, but it was something. When he came back to the living room, Emma had fallen asleep on the floor, her head on Victoria's lap, a dinosaur book open across her chest. Victoria looked up at Ryan, and her expression was tender. "She's out," Victoria whispered. "She does this, gets all wound up and then crashes hard." Ryan crouched down and carefully lifted Emma into his arms. She didn't wake up, just snuggled against his chest, mumbling something about pterodactyls. He carried her upstairs to her room, tucked her into bed with her favorite stuffed triceratops, and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her sleep. The text message flashed through his mind. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Ryan felt rage move through him, hot and sharp. Damien could threaten him all he wanted, but threatening Emma? That crossed a line Ryan hadn't even known existed. When he came back downstairs, Victoria was sitting on the couch, looking exhausted. "You okay?" Ryan asked, sitting next to her. "I should be asking you that." Victoria turned to face him. "You've been tense since we got here. What happened?" Ryan hesitated, then showed her the text. Victoria's face went white. "He's watching your house." "Yeah." "Ryan, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I brought this into your life, and now he's threatening Emma, and I—" "Stop." Ryan took her hand. "This isn't your fault. This is Damien being a psychopath. You didn't cause this." "But if we hadn't started dating, then he'd still be a psychopath, and you'd still be dealing with this alone." Ryan squeezed her hand. "At least now you have backup." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want Emma to get hurt because of me." "She won't. I ordered security cameras. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to the school about not releasing her to anyone but me or my mom. I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep her safe." "What if that's not enough?" Victoria's voice broke. "What if he—" "Then we deal with it, together." Ryan moved closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "I'm not going to let him win, Victoria. I'm not going to let him scare us into giving up something good." Victoria leaned against him, and they sat like that for a long time, holding each other while the night settled around them. "I don't deserve you," Victoria whispered. "Yeah, you do." Ryan kissed the top of her head. "You deserve someone who stays, who fights for you, who doesn't run when things get complicated." "Things are really complicated." "Good thing I like complicated." Victoria laughed, watery and exhausted. "You're insane." "Probably. But so are you, and we match." They stayed on the couch until late, talking about everything and nothing, and when Victoria finally said she should go home, Ryan didn't want to let her leave. Didn't want her going back to an empty apartment where Damien might be waiting. "Stay here tonight," he said. "You can take the guest room. I don't want you to be alone." Victoria looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." Ryan gave her an old t-shirt and sweatpants to sleep in, showed her where the guest room was, made sure she had everything she needed. "Thank you," Victoria said from the doorway. "For everything. For Emma. For not running away from this disaster." "You're not a disaster," Ryan said. "You're just someone going through a hard time. There's a difference." He left her to get ready for bed and went to his own room, but he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the text message, kept imagining worst-case scenarios. Around midnight, he heard a soft knock on his door. "Ryan?" Victoria's voice was small. "I can't sleep. Can I just sit in here for a while?" "Yeah, of course." Victoria came in and sat on the edge of his bed, and Ryan sat next to her, both of them staring at the wall. "I keep thinking about what he said," Victoria whispered. "About Emma, about accidents, and I can't stop my brain from going to terrible places." "I know. Me too." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Victoria said, "What if we're making this worse? What if the more we fight back, the more dangerous he becomes?" Ryan thought about that, really thought about it. "Maybe," he said finally, "but what's the alternative? We give him what he wants? We stop seeing each other? I fire you from the community project before it even starts?" He shook his head. "That's not living. That's just letting him win in slow motion. But if Emma gets hurt, she won't, because we're going to be smart. We're going to take precautions. We're going to build a case against him until we have enough evidence to put him away." Ryan took Victoria's hand. "And we're not going to let fear make our decisions for us." Victoria looked at their joined hands. "When did you become so brave?" "About the same time you did. I think we're rubbing off on each other." She smiled, small but real. "Can I stay in here just for tonight? I know that's weird, but I don't want to be alone, and you can stay." They lay down on opposite sides of the bed, both fully clothed, both carefully not touching. But sometime in the night, they drifted together. And when Ryan woke up at dawn, Victoria was curled against his chest, her breathing slow and even. He didn't move, didn't want to wake her, didn't want this moment to end. Because despite everything, despite Damien, despite the threats, despite the fear, this felt right. And Ryan was done letting other people decide what he was allowed to have. Outside, the sun was rising over Chicago, painting the sky pink and gold. And in a car parked 3 houses down, Damien Cross sat watching Ryan's bedroom window, his hands clenched on the steering wheel, waiting for his next move. The security cameras arrived the next morning, and Ryan installed them himself while Emma ate cereal and asked why they needed cameras when they already had eyes. Because Daddy can't see the whole house at once, Ryan explained, mounting a camera above the front door. These help me see what's happening even when I'm not looking. Like having extra eyes? Exactly like that. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer and went back to her cereal, leaving Ryan to finish the installation with a knot of anxiety sitting heavy in his stomach. He positioned cameras at every entry point, angled them to catch the street, the driveway, the backyard. It felt paranoid. It felt necessary. Victoria had left early that morning, slipping out before Emma woke up, both of them agreeing it was too soon to explain why Victoria had stayed over. But she'd kissed Ryan goodbye at the door, soft and quick, and whispered thank you, like he'd done something heroic instead of just letting her sleep in his guest room. His phone buzzed as he was testing the camera feeds. Victoria. Board meeting in an hour. They want to discuss the community center project. Are you still interested in leading the design? Ryan stared at the message. After everything that had happened in the past week, he'd almost forgotten about the Foundation's project, a community teaching center that would offer cooking classes, job training, and support programs for struggling families. Margaret had approached him about it after the board meeting, said Victoria had specifically recommended him. It was exactly the kind of work Ryan had gotten into design for, back before luxury became his specialty. Before Sarah died, and he stopped caring about anything except keeping Emma safe and fed. Ryan, definitely interested. Should I come to the meeting? Victoria, if you want, but no pressure. I know you have Emma. Ryan, my mom can watch her. I'll be there. He dropped Emma off at his mother's house, endured 20 minutes of questions about Victoria because his mom had the investigative instincts of a detective and the subtlety of a sledgehammer, and made it to the Foundation offices with 5 minutes to spare. Victoria met him in the lobby, looking professional and put together in a way that would have fooled anyone who hadn't seen her crying in a park 3 weeks ago. You didn't have to come, she said, but she was smiling. I could have just filled you in later. I wanted to be here. Besides, I'm curious what you told them about me. Only good things. Mostly good things. Some mildly embarrassing things about your obsession with symmetry. It's not an obsession, it's an appreciation for proper spatial balance. Victoria laughed, and for a moment they were just two people who liked each other, standing in a lobby, forgetting about everything else. Then Margaret appeared from around the corner, and the moment shifted back to business. Ryan, good to see you again, Margaret said, shaking his hand. Victoria's been singing your praises. I looked at your portfolio. Impressive work. Thank you. Let's talk about what we need. The conference room was smaller than the one where Victoria had confessed her secrets. And this meeting had fewer people. Just Margaret, Patricia, Victoria, and James the lawyer who seemed to attend every meeting whether he was needed or not. Margaret pulled up architectural plans on a screen at the front of the room. We've acquired a building in West Garfield Park, 13,000 square feet, 2 stories, currently a disaster. We want to turn it into a community center focused on food education and job skills, commercial kitchen, classroom space, childcare area, offices. We have the funding. We need someone to design it. Ryan studied the plans. The building had good bones, but needed everything else. What's your timeline? Aggressive. We'd like to break ground in 3 months, be operational within the year. That's tight. We're aware, but the need is urgent, and we've got matching funds that expire if we don't move fast. Margaret looked at him. Victoria says you're the right person for this, that you understand the community, understand what these families need. Is she right? Ryan glanced at Victoria, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Yeah, he said. I think she is. They spent the next 2 hours going through requirements, budget constraints, design priorities. Patricia talked about the families they served, the barriers they faced, the difference a space like this could make. James talked about permits and liability and insurance requirements until everyone's eyes glazed over. Margaret kept them on track with the efficiency of someone who'd been running meetings for decades. And Victoria sat quietly, taking notes, occasionally adding insights about programming needs or community feedback, but mostly just watching Ryan work through the problems with an intensity that made his chest feel tight. When the meeting finally ended, Margaret pulled Ryan aside. "I want to be direct with you," she said. "We're offering you this project because Victoria recommended you, and I trust her judgment. But I'm also aware that you two are dating, and that creates potential complications." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I can be professional." "I don't doubt that. But I need to know. If things don't work out between you and Victoria, is that going to affect your commitment to this project?" It was a fair question. Ryan hated it anyway. "No," he said firmly. "If Victoria and I don't work out, and I really hope we do, but if we don't, I'll still finish this project. Because it matters. Because the families who'll use this space matter. My personal life doesn't change that." Margaret studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good answer. Welcome to the team." She left, followed by Patricia and James, leaving Ryan alone with Victoria in the conference room. "Sorry about that," Victoria said quietly. "Margaret likes to test people. It's fine. She's protecting the foundation, protecting you." Ryan gathered up the plans. "Besides, she's not wrong to be concerned. We are moving fast." "Too fast?" Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who'd been terrified to open a menu 3 weeks ago and had somehow found the courage to blow up her entire life just to stop living in fear. "No," he said. "Not too fast. Just fast." Victoria smiled, and it was the real smile, the one that made her whole face change. "Good. Because I really need this project to work, and I really need you to be the one to design it." "Why me? You could have recommended anyone." "Because you actually care. Most designers in this city, they'd take this project and make it beautiful and completely useless. They'd prioritize aesthetics over function, impress the donors, but ignore the people who have to use the space every day." Victoria moved closer. "You're not like that. You listen, you ask questions, you care about getting it right. You barely know me." "I know enough." She reached out and straightened his collar, a gesture so casual and intimate it made Ryan's breath catch. "I know you ordered cameras for your house because you're worried about Emma. I know you showed up to my board meeting even though we'd been on one date. I know you push your daughter on the swing until your arms are tired because it makes her laugh. I know enough." Ryan caught her hand, held it against his chest. "Victoria." His phone rang, shattering the moment. It was Emma's school. Ryan's stomach dropped. He answered immediately. "Mr. Carter, this is Principal Hoffman at Lincoln Elementary." The woman's voice was calm but serious. "Emma's fine, but we had an incident today. A man tried to pick her up from the playground during recess, claiming to be her uncle." The world tilted. "What?" Ryan's voice came out strangled. "I don't have a brother. Emma doesn't have an uncle. We're aware. That's why we didn't release her and called you immediately. The man left when our security guard approached, but we wanted to inform you right away." "Did you get a description? Did anyone recognize him?" "Tall, well-dressed, dark hair. The teacher who saw him said he looked like he belonged here, like a parent or professional. We're reviewing security footage now." Ryan already knew what the footage would show. He closed his eyes, rage burning through his veins so hot he could barely think. "I'm coming to get her right now," he said. "Don't let her out of your sight. Don't let anyone near her who isn't me or my mother. I'm sending you a photo of my mom right now, and if anyone else tries to approach Emma, call the police." "Of course, Mr. Carter, we take these situations very seriously." Ryan hung up and immediately texted his mom's photo to the school office, his hands shaking so badly he could barely type. "What happened?" Victoria asked, her face pale. "Damien tried to take Emma from her school." Victoria's hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God!" Ryan was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his keys, his phone. "I have to get her. I'm coming with you." "Victoria, you don't have to." "I'm coming with you," she said again, and her voice left no room for argument. They drove to the school in silence, Ryan's knuckles white on the steering wheel, his mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. What if the security guard hadn't been there? What if Damien had gotten to Emma first? What if... She's okay, Victoria said quietly, reading his thoughts. She's safe. We're going to get her, and she's going to be fine. Ryan nodded but didn't trust himself to speak. At the school, they were escorted to the principal's office, where Emma sat in a chair that was too big for her, swinging her legs and looking more confused than scared. "Daddy!" She jumped up when she saw Ryan, and he caught her in a hug so tight she squeaked. "Are you okay?" Ryan pulled back, scanning her face, her arms, checking for any sign that she'd been hurt. "Did that man touch you? Did he say anything to you?" "I'm fine. He was weird, though." Emma wrinkled her nose. "He said he was Uncle David and that you sent him to pick me up, but I don't have an Uncle David, so I told Miss Peterson." "You did exactly right, sweetheart. You were so smart." Emma beamed at the praise, then noticed Victoria standing in the doorway. "Hi, Victoria. Did you come to pick me up, too?" "Just to make sure you were okay," Victoria said, and her voice was thick with emotion. Principal Hoffman showed them the security footage. The video was grainy but clear enough. Damien approaching the playground fence, calling Emma over, smiling that practiced smile. Emma talking to him through the fence, then backing away when he asked her to come with him. A teacher noticing and moving toward them. Damien leaving quickly, casually, like he'd just made an honest mistake. "I've already called the police," Principal Hoffman said. "They're sending an officer to take your statement, and we're implementing new security protocols immediately. No one gets access to the playground during school hours, not even parents." "Thank you," Ryan said, though what he really wanted to do was scream. "Can I take her home now?" "Of course. We'll call you when the police need to follow up." Ryan carried Emma to the car, even though she was perfectly capable of walking, held her close while Victoria drove because he didn't trust himself behind the wheel. Emma chattered the whole way home, seemingly unaffected by what had happened, asking if they could get ice cream and whether Victoria could stay for dinner again, and if Daddy remembered that tomorrow was library day, so she needed to return her dinosaur books. It was surreal. His daughter had nearly been kidnapped, and she was worried about library books. When they got home, Ryan let Emma pick a movie. She chose the one about the talking fish that she'd seen approximately 40,000 times, and set her up in the living room with snacks. Then he went into the kitchen, where Victoria was standing by the window, staring out at nothing. "I'm so sorry," she said without turning around. "This is my fault. If we hadn't... Don't." Ryan's voice came out harsher than he intended. He took a breath, tried again. "Don't apologize for something Damien did. This is on him, not you." "But he did it because of me. Because he wants to hurt me, and the way to do that is to hurt you and Emma." Victoria turned and her eyes were red. "I should end this. Should leave before anyone else gets hurt. No." "Ryan." "No," he said again, moving toward her. "That's what he wants. He wants us scared, wants us separated, wants to prove he still has power over your life. If we give him that, he wins." "But what if next time..." Victoria's voice broke. "What if next time he actually gets to Emma? What if he hurts her just to prove a point?" Ryan felt the fear in his chest, sharp and cold, because she was right. Damien had proven he was willing to cross any line. "Then we make sure there isn't a next time," Ryan said. "We go to the police again, we show them the school footage, we get that restraining order, we build a case until we have enough to put him away. And in the meantime, we just hope he doesn't escalate?" Ryan didn't have a good answer for that. His phone rang. "Detective Chen." "Mr. Carter, I just reviewed the footage from Emma's school. This changes things. Attempted kidnapping, especially of a minor, is something we can act on. I'm issuing an arrest warrant for Damien Cross." Relief flooded through Ryan so intense he had to sit down. "When?" "We're executing it now. I've got officers heading to his residence and his office. We'll find him. And if you don't, we will. But in the meantime, I want you to take precautions. Vary your routine. Don't let Emma out of your sight. Consider staying somewhere he wouldn't expect to find you." They talked for a few more minutes about safety protocols and next steps, and when Ryan hung up, he felt like he could breathe for the first time since the school had called. "They're arresting him," he told Victoria. "Right now." Victoria sat down hard on the kitchen chair. "Really? Really?" The school footage was enough. Attempted kidnapping of a minor. "Oh my God." Victoria put her face in her hands, and her shoulders started shaking. For a second, Ryan thought she was crying, but then he realized she was laughing. "Oh my God, they're actually arresting him. This might actually be over. Ryan sat down next to her and took her hand. It might be. They sat like that while Emma's movie played in the other room, while the afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen window, while somewhere across the city, police officers were searching for a man who'd terrorized them for too long. Ryan's phone buzzed an hour later. Detective Chen again. We found him at his office. He's in custody. I'll need you both to come down and give formal statements, but he's not going anywhere tonight. Ryan closed his eyes, feeling something in his chest unclench. Thank you. When he told Victoria, she started crying for real this time, and Ryan held her while she shook with sobs that sounded like relief and grief and exhaustion all mixed together. It's over, she kept saying. It's really over. Yeah, Ryan whispered into her hair. It's really over. But even as he said it, a small part of him wondered if it was true. Damien had money, connections, lawyers who could probably get him out on bail by tomorrow. The arrest was a victory, but the war might not be finished. Still, for tonight, it was enough. Emma came into the kitchen, looking concerned. Why is Victoria crying? Is she sad about the dinosaurs? No, baby, Ryan said. She's crying because she's happy. Emma considered this. That's weird. When I'm happy, I laugh. Everyone's different. Emma seemed to accept this and climbed into Victoria's lap, patting her arm awkwardly. It's okay. Do you want to watch the fish movie with me? The fish is sad at the beginning, but then he finds his dad, and it's happy. Victoria laughed through her tears. That sounds perfect. They ended up on the couch, the three of them, watching a movie about a forgetful fish and a worried father. And Ryan thought about how much his life had changed in 3 weeks. How he'd gone from eating expensive appetizers he couldn't afford to sitting on his worn-out couch with a woman he was falling for and a daughter who'd accepted her into their lives like she'd always been there. It wasn't perfect. Victoria was still crying sporadically. Emma kept asking questions about every single thing that happened on screen, even though she'd seen this movie 100 times. And Ryan's mind kept drifting to Damien sitting in a jail cell, probably already on the phone with his lawyer. But it was real. It was theirs. And for now, that was enough. Detective Chen called again the next morning. Damien had been arraigned, bail set at $500,000. He'd posted it within 2 hours. He's out? Ryan felt his stomach drop. Already? He's out, but he's got an ankle monitor, and he's under strict orders to stay away from you, Victoria, and Emma. If he violates those terms, he goes back to jail immediately. No bail the second time. And if he violates them, but nobody catches him until after he's hurt someone? Detective Chen was quiet for a moment. I understand your concern, Mr. Carter. All I can tell you is that we're taking this seriously. Keep your security cameras running, vary your routes, trust your instincts. If you see him anywhere near you, call 911. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was better than nothing. Ryan told Victoria the news over coffee at the same shop where they'd had their second date. She took it better than he expected. Or maybe she was just too tired to panic anymore. So he's out there, she said flatly. Wearing an ankle monitor like that's going to stop him from doing anything. It might. The threat of going back to jail. He doesn't care about jail. He cares about control, about winning. Victoria stirred her coffee without drinking it. This isn't over, Ryan. You know that, right? Even with the arrest, even with the restraining order, this isn't over. Ryan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the system would protect them. But he'd spent enough time in the real world to know that wasn't always true. Then what do we do? He asked. Victoria looked up at him, and there was something fierce in her eyes. We live our lives anyway. We refuse to let him take anything else from us. We work on the community center, we go on dates, I help Emma with her homework if she'll let me. We act like he doesn't exist. And when he shows up again, we deal with it together. Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. I'm not running anymore, Ryan. I'm done being scared. Ryan squeezed her hand, hoping she was right, hoping courage was enough. The next few weeks settled into a new kind of normal. Ryan worked on designs for the community center, transforming the derelict building in his plans into something beautiful and functional. Victoria enrolled in online classes to finish her master's degree, determined to turn her lie into truth. Emma started inviting Victoria to school events like she was already part of the family, and Damien stayed away. Ryan checked the security cameras obsessively, waiting for him to appear. But the days passed, and there was nothing. No threatening texts, no midnight visits, no attempts to grab Emma. Just silence. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like waiting for a bomb to explode. Maybe he actually learned his lesson, Victoria suggested one night. They were at Ryan's house, cooking dinner while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. Maybe the arrest scared him enough to back off. Maybe, Ryan said, though he didn't believe it. Victoria caught the doubt in his voice. But you don't think so. I think men like Damien don't just give up. They regroup. They plan. They wait for the right moment. That's cheerful. That's realistic. Emma looked up from her math worksheet. Who's Damien? Ryan and Victoria exchanged a glance. Nobody important, Victoria said quickly. Just someone from work. Oh. Emma went back to her homework, apparently satisfied. Ryan lowered his voice. We should probably not talk about this when she's around. Agreed. Sorry. They finished making dinner, actual food this time, not just chicken nuggets, and Ryan watched Victoria help Emma with fractions, patient and encouraging even when Emma insisted that math was stupid and she'd rather learn about prehistoric marine reptiles. This was what Ryan wanted, this quiet, ordinary evening, this feeling of family, and he refused to let Damien take it away. The call came 3 weeks after Damien's arrest. It was Margaret, her voice tight with controlled anger. Victoria's office was broken into last night. The police are there now. You should probably come down. Ryan's blood turned to ice. Is she okay? She wasn't there when it happened, but Ryan, they destroyed everything. Her computer, her files, the walls. It's bad. Ryan grabbed his keys, texted his mom to pick up Emma from school, and drove to the foundation offices with his heart in his throat. The police had already cordoned off Victoria's office with yellow tape. Through the doorway, Ryan could see the destruction. Desk overturned, computer smashed, papers scattered everywhere. And on the wall, spray-painted in red letters 3 feet high, liar. Victoria was standing in the hallway talking to a police officer, her face pale but composed. When she saw Ryan, something in her expression cracked, and she walked into his arms. He did this, she said into his chest. The ankle monitor shows he was home all night, so he probably hired someone, but he did this. I know. He's never going to stop. We can arrest him, restrain him, lock him up, and he'll still find ways to hurt me. Ryan held her tighter, wishing he had an answer, wishing he could fix this. But some things couldn't be fixed. They could only be survived. And they would survive this, together. The word liar stayed on Victoria's office wall for 3 days while the police investigated, processed evidence, took photographs. During those 3 days, Victoria worked from a folding table in the conference room, pretending the spray paint hadn't gotten under her skin, pretending she wasn't jumping at every unexpected sound. The investigation went nowhere. The security cameras had been disabled, professionally, the police said, by someone who knew what they were doing. No fingerprints, no witnesses. And Damien's ankle monitor confirmed he'd been home all night, probably sitting on his couch with a scotch, paying someone else to do his dirty work. We can't prove he hired anyone, Detective Chen admitted when she called with the update. Without evidence linking him to whoever broke in, there's nothing we can charge him with. Victoria thanked her and hung up, feeling the familiar weight of helplessness settle over her shoulders. She was sitting in Ryan's living room when she made the decision. Emma was upstairs doing homework, and Ryan was in the kitchen making tea. Neither of them would drink. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the radiator clicking and Emma occasionally talking to herself about geometry. I need to confront him, Victoria said. Ryan appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs. What? Damien, I need to confront him, face to face. End this. That's a terrible idea. Probably. Victoria took one of the mugs, wrapped her hands around it for warmth. But I'm done hiding, done waiting for the next thing he'll do. I need to look him in the eye and tell him he doesn't control me anymore. Ryan sat down next to her, his jaw tight. And you think that'll work? You think he'll just say, okay, you win, and leave you alone? No, but I think I need to do it anyway, for me, not for him. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, staring at his tea. If you're going to do this, he said finally, you're not going alone. Ryan, I mean it. You want to confront him, fine. But I'm coming with you. We do this together or not at all. Victoria wanted to argue, wanted to protect him from getting more involved than he already was. But the truth was, she didn't want to face Damien alone. Didn't trust herself not to fall back into old patterns, old fears. Okay, she said quietly. Together. They met Damien at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory that Damien suggested when Victoria called him. He'd sounded surprised to hear from her, then pleased, like he'd been waiting for her to break. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd, which Victoria had insisted on. Public meant safe. Public meant witnesses. Damien was already there when they arrived, sitting at a corner table with a cappuccino and the Wall Street Journal. He looked up when they walked in, and his smile was cold. Victoria, and you brought your knight in shining armor. He gestured to the empty chairs. Please, sit. We'll stand, Ryan said, and his voice had an edge Victoria had never heard before. Damien's smile widened. Suit yourself. Though I have to say, this is unexpected. Last time we spoke, you were threatening me with police and restraining orders. Now you're calling me up for coffee. What changed? Nothing changed, Victoria said. I just wanted to tell you to your face that you don't scare me anymore. Is that so? Damien took a sip of his cappuccino. Because from where I'm sitting, you look pretty scared. Victoria's hands were shaking, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. You can vandalize my office. You can send threatening messages. You can hire people to break into my life. But you can't control me anymore, Damien. That's over. I never controlled you, sweetheart. I just helped you understand your place. My place? Victoria felt anger rise in her chest, hot and sharp. You made me feel worthless for 3 years, made me believe I was nothing without you. But you know what I figured out? I was never nothing. You just needed me to think I was so you could feel powerful. Damien's smile slipped just slightly. You're pathetic, Victoria continued, and her voice was steady now. You're a small, insecure man who can only feel big by making other people feel small. You need control because without it, you're nothing. And I'm done giving you that power. Careful, Damien said softly. You're forgetting who you're talking to. No, I'm not. I'm talking to my abusive ex-boyfriend who's facing criminal charges and an ankle monitor because he can't handle rejection like an adult. Victoria leaned forward. You tried to kidnap a 6-year-old girl to hurt me. You destroyed my office. You've spent 6 months making my life hell because I dared to leave you. And for what? What did it get you? I'm still here. I still have my job. I'm still with Ryan. The only thing you accomplished is proving exactly how pathetic you are. Damien's face had gone red. You think you're so brave, coming here with your boyfriend as backup. But we both know the truth, Victoria. You're still that scared girl who lied on her resume, still that poor kid who didn't belong in my world. And you never will. You're right, Victoria said, and Damien blinked, surprised. I'm not part of your world, thank God. Your world is full of people like you, people who measure worth in dollars and status, who think cruelty is strength, who can't understand that some things matter more than money or power. I don't want to be part of that world. I never did. Then what do you want? Damien's voice was sharp now, angry. Victoria looked at Ryan, who'd been standing silently beside her, letting her handle this but ready to step in if she needed him. Then she looked back at Damien. I want you to leave me alone. I want you to move on with your life and let me move on with mine. I want to never see your face or hear your voice again. And if you can't do that, if you keep coming after me or Ryan or Emma, I will spend every single day for the rest of my life making sure everyone knows exactly who you are. I'll tell every reporter who'll listen. I'll post on every social media platform. I'll make sure your name is permanently associated with the words abuser and stalker until you can't get a table at a restaurant without someone recognizing you as the man who terrorized his ex-girlfriend. You wouldn't dare. Try me. They stared at each other across the coffee shop table, and Victoria saw something flicker in Damien's eyes. Not fear, exactly, but uncertainty. The realization that maybe, this time, she meant it. This isn't over, Damien said finally. Yeah, it is. Victoria straightened up. You just haven't accepted it yet. But you will. Because I'm done being afraid of you, Damien, and without my fear, you have nothing. She turned and walked out of the coffee shop without looking back, Ryan right beside her. Outside, her legs almost gave out. Ryan caught her arm, steadied her. You okay? He asked. No? Victoria was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. But I did it. I actually did it. You did. Ryan pulled her into a hug right there on the sidewalk, and Victoria held on to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop spinning. Do you think it worked? She asked into his shoulder. Do you think he'll actually leave us alone now? I don't know. But I think you scared him, and that's something. They stood like that for a long moment, people streaming past them on the busy sidewalk, the city moving around them like they weren't even there. Victoria's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, and her stomach clenched, but when she opened it, the message made her breath catch. Unknown. You win. I'm done. That was it. 4 words. No signature, but Victoria knew it was from Damien. She showed Ryan, hardly daring to believe it. Could be a trick, Ryan said cautiously. Could be. Victoria stared at the message. But I don't think it is. I think he finally realized he lost. The weeks that followed were strange. Victoria kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Damien to show up again with some new torment. But he didn't. The threatening messages stopped. The gifts stopped arriving at her office. His name disappeared from the foundation's donor list. It was like he'd vanished. Maybe he actually meant it, Ryan said one night. They were at his house again. Victoria spent most of her free time there now, had her own drawer in his dresser and a toothbrush in the bathroom. Maybe you actually got through to him. Or maybe he's just planning something bigger. Victoria. Ryan turned to face her on the couch. You can't live your whole life waiting for him to come back. At some point, you have to accept that maybe it's over. What if I'm wrong? Then we deal with it, like we've dealt with everything else. Ryan took her hand. But in the meantime, can we try to just be happy? Can we work on the community center and go on dates and let Emma drag you to every dinosaur exhibit in the state without constantly looking over our shoulders? Victoria wanted to say no, wanted to explain that relaxing meant letting her guard down, and letting her guard down meant getting hurt. But she was tired of being afraid, tired of letting Damien control her life even when he wasn't physically there. Okay, she said. Let's try happy. And they did. The community center became Victoria's passion project. She and Ryan spent hours going over designs, arguing about kitchen layouts and classroom configurations. Patricia from the board joined them for site visits, talking about the families who'd used the space, the programs they wanted to offer. We need it to feel welcoming, Patricia said, walking through the gutted building that would soon become something beautiful. Not institutional, not like charity, like home. Ryan took notes, asked questions, sketched ideas. And Victoria watched him work, watched the way he listened to what people needed and found ways to make it real. And she thought about how lucky she was to have found someone who cared about the same things she did. Emma started calling Victoria by her name instead of Daddy's friend, which felt like progress. She also started leaving little notes for Victoria around Ryan's house, drawings of dinosaurs, misspelled compliments, one memorable stick figure portrait labeled Victoria and me and Daddy that made Victoria cry in the bathroom for 10 minutes. She really likes you, Ryan said one night after Emma had gone to bed. I think she might actually love you. I love her too, Victoria admitted, and saying it out loud made it real in a way that scared and thrilled her at the same time. Ryan smiled. Good, because she's kind of a package deal with me. I'm aware. And for the record, Ryan moved closer, tucking a strand of hair behind Victoria's ear. I might love you too. Victoria's heart stopped. Might? Okay, definitely. I definitely love you. Ryan looked nervous, like he'd just admitted something terrifying. Is that too fast? It's been 3 months. That's probably too fast. I shouldn't have said... Victoria kissed him, cutting off his rambling. When she pulled back, she was smiling. I love you too, she said. And yeah, it's fast. But I don't care. Yeah? Yeah. They kissed again, slower this time, and Victoria thought about how 3 months ago she'd been terrified to open a menu at an expensive restaurant, and now she was standing in Ryan's kitchen saying, I love you, and meaning it with every part of herself. Life was strange, but strange was good. The community center broke ground in March, 6 months after that first disastrous blind date. The whole foundation staff showed up for the ceremony, along with families from the neighborhood, local politicians who wanted photo ops, and Emma, who wore her fanciest dress and told everyone who'd listen that her dad designed the building and her Victoria ran the whole foundation. Your Victoria? Ryan teased when he overheard her. Yeah, my Victoria, Emma said, like it was obvious. You can share. Victoria laughed so hard she almost cried. Margaret gave a speech about community and second chances and the power of giving people the tools they needed to rebuild their lives. Victoria stood next to Ryan while Margaret talked, their fingers intertwined, and thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd survived. After the ceremony, after the speeches and the photos and the ceremonial first shovel of dirt, Victoria's phone buzzed. She almost didn't check it, had trained herself to ignore notifications unless they were urgent. But something made her look. It was an email from Damien. Her stomach dropped, and Ryan must have felt her tense because he immediately asked, "What's wrong?" "Email from Damien. Do you want to read it?" Victoria didn't, but she also couldn't not read it. She opened the email with shaking hands. The message was short. "I'm moving to New York, new job, new life. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not for everything, I'm not that evolved, but for the worst of it. For scaring you, for threatening your boyfriend's kid. That crossed a line, and I knew it when I did it. For what it's worth, you were right about me. I did need to control you because without that I felt powerless. I'm trying to be better. Trying to figure out who I am when I'm not making someone else feel small. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you won, completely. And I'm trying to accept that with something resembling grace. Good luck with the community center. Good luck with your life. I hope I never see you again, and I mean that in the best possible way. D." Victoria read it twice, then handed her phone to Ryan. When he finished, he looked up at her. "Do you believe him?" "I don't know." Victoria watched Emma run around the construction site with some other kids, shrieking with joy about absolutely nothing. "But I think I want to." Wanting to believe someone can change and actually believing it are different things. "I know." Victoria took her phone back, read the email one more time. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I don't have to forgive him or believe in his redemption. Maybe I just have to accept that it's over and move on. Ryan nodded. That's probably healthier anyway. Victoria deleted the email without responding. Then she turned off her phone entirely and shoved it in her pocket. "Come on," she said, grabbing Ryan's hand. "Emma wants us to see her dig dirt." They spent the rest of the afternoon at the construction site, Emma getting completely filthy while she helped move piles of dirt that the construction workers had to move right back. Victoria took photos on Ryan's phone, laughing as Emma posed with her tiny shovel like she was demolishing the building herself. This was happiness, Victoria realized. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of people who made the problems bearable. People who showed up. People who stayed. The community center opened 10 months later in January, in the middle of a snowstorm that should have kept everyone away but didn't. Families showed up in force, bundled in winter coats, excited to see the space they'd heard about for months. The building was beautiful. Ryan had designed it with warmth in mind. Lots of natural light, colors that felt cheerful without being childish. Spaces that flowed naturally from one to the next. The commercial kitchen was state-of-the-art but approachable, with enough room for classes and enough equipment to teach real skills. The classrooms were flexible, able to adapt to different programs. The childcare area was bright and safe, full of books and toys and soft places to land. Victoria stood in the main hall during the opening reception, watching families explore, watching kids run through the space with wonder, watching Patricia cry happy tears while she hugged everyone who walked through the door. "You did this," Ryan said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "This whole thing, this was your vision." "We did this," Victoria corrected, leaning back against him. "You designed it. The board funded it. The community supported it. I just tied it together. Still, be proud of yourself. You earned it." Victoria looked around the space, at the families, at the possibilities, at the physical proof that good things could come from hard times, and let herself feel proud. Let herself believe she deserved this. Emma ran up to them, covered in chocolate from the dessert table. "There's a dinosaur book in the kids' room. Can I read it?" "After you wash your face," Ryan said, handing her a napkin. Emma took the napkin, smeared chocolate around more than actually cleaning it, and ran off again. "She's a mess," Victoria said fondly. "She's our mess." Our mess. Victoria liked the sound of that. Margaret found them a few minutes later, looking pleased. "I have news. Remember how we applied for that expansion grant? The one everyone said was a long shot?" "We got it?" Victoria's eyes widened. We got it. 5 million over 3 years, enough to replicate this model in 2 more neighborhoods. Margaret grinned. Congratulations. You just became responsible for 3 community centers. Victoria felt dizzy. That's incredible. You've earned it, both of you. Margaret looked at Ryan. Any chance you want to design the next 2? Absolutely. After Margaret left, Victoria turned to Ryan. 3 centers, that's going to be so much work. Good thing you've got help. Good thing. Victoria stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, quick and sweet. Thank you for all of this, for showing up to my board meeting, for not running away when things got complicated, for being you. Right back at you. Ryan smiled. Though for the record, things are still complicated. Emma asked me yesterday when you're moving in, and I told her we hadn't talked about it yet, and she said I was being slow and that I should probably hurry up before you realize you can do better. Victoria laughed. She said that? She's 6. She has no filter. Ryan paused. But she's not wrong about the first part. Have you thought about it? Moving in? Victoria's heart sped up. I've thought about it. And? And I want to, but I'm also terrified. What if we're moving too fast? What if living together is different than dating? What if it's great? Ryan interrupted gently. What if it's exactly what we both want and need? What if we stop being afraid of good things and just let ourselves have them? Victoria looked at him. Really looked at him. At this man who'd seen her at her worst and stayed anyway. Who'd fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. Who'd helped her remember that she deserved good things, even when her brain insisted otherwise. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Let's be terrified together. Yeah? Yeah. Ryan kissed her, right there in the middle of the community center, surrounded by families and noise and the sound of children laughing, and Victoria thought this was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and honest and worth every hard moment it took to get here. They moved Victoria's things into Ryan's house over the course of a month, Emma helping by carrying exactly 1 stuffed animal per trip and declaring it very heavy work. Victoria's studio apartment felt even smaller when she packed it up, her whole life fitting into a dozen boxes that looked almost sad stacked in Ryan's living room. Is that everything? Ryan asked, looking at the modest pile. That's everything. Victoria felt a wave of embarrassment. I don't have much. Most of my money goes to student loans and bills and... Hey, Ryan took her hand. I don't care about stuff. I care about you. And now you're here, and Emma's already rearranged her room so she can show you her rock collection first thing tomorrow morning, and I'm pretty sure my mom is planning to treat you like a long-lost daughter, so brace yourself for that. Victoria laughed. Your mom already treats me like that. Exactly. It's only going to get worse. Living together was an adjustment. Victoria had gotten used to living alone, to silence and solitude and the ability to cry in her apartment without anyone asking if she was okay. Now there was always noise, Emma talking, music playing, Ryan humming while he cooked. There was less privacy, less space to hide when things got hard. But there was also support. Someone to talk to when work got overwhelming, someone to help with dishes and laundry and the 1,000 small tasks that made up a life. Someone to hold her when the nightmares came, the ones where Damien was chasing her and she couldn't run fast enough. The nightmares faded over time. Not completely. Victoria suspected they might never completely disappear, but enough that she could sleep through most nights without waking up in a panic. Damien stayed in New York. Victoria knew this because she checked sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, scrolling through his social media even though she knew it was unhealthy. He seemed to be doing well. New job at a hedge fund, new girlfriend who looked like a younger version of Victoria. It made her stomach turn, thinking about some other woman going through what she'd gone through. But she also couldn't save everyone. Could only save herself. She blocked him on everything after that. Deleted his number, unfollowed him on every platform, removed every last trace of him from her digital life. It felt like closing a door she should have closed years ago. Emma's 7th birthday came in April. They threw a party at the house, invited half of Emma's class, ordered pizza and a dinosaur cake that cost more than Victoria's weekly grocery budget used to be. Emma wore a crown made of construction paper and glitter and declared herself the birthday queen of dinosaurs, which was apparently a real title that required everyone to address her as Your Majesty. Victoria helped serve cake and watched Ryan navigate a room full of 7-year-olds with the patience of a saint, and thought about how a year ago she'd been alone, scared, convinced she'd never have this noise, this chaos, this family. "You look happy," Patricia said, appearing next to her with a slice of cake. She'd become something like a friend over the past year, someone who checked in on Victoria and called her out when she was being too hard on herself. "I am happy," Victoria admitted. "Is that weird? After everything that happened, I'm actually happy." "That's not weird. That's healing." Patricia took a bite of cake. "You did the work. You faced your trauma. You built a life you actually want instead of just surviving the one you had. That's worth celebrating." Victoria thought about that, about how much work it had been. Therapy twice a week, finishing her degree, learning to trust again, letting herself be vulnerable. About how many times she'd wanted to give up, to retreat back into the safety of isolation. But she hadn't. She'd kept going. And now she was here, at a 7-year-old's birthday party, eating dinosaur cake and feeling genuinely happy. That night, after the party ended and Emma crashed hard from sugar overload, Victoria and Ryan sat on the back porch with glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For what?" "For not judging me. That first night, at the restaurant." Victoria swirled her wine. "You could have. You could have seen a woman who couldn't afford the menu and decided I wasn't worth your time. But you didn't." "Of course I didn't. That would have made me an asshole. A lot of people are assholes." "True," Ryan smiled, "but I try not to be one when I can help it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria asked. "Something I haven't told anyone." "Always. When Damien first started being cruel, when he'd make those comments about me not belonging in his world, part of me believed him. Part of me thought he was right, that I was pretending to be something I wasn't, that I didn't deserve nice things or success or love." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "And it took me years to realize that was bullshit, that I deserved all of those things, not because of some external validation, but just because I'm a person, just because I exist." Ryan took her hand. "You're not just a person. You're an incredible person. You run a foundation that changes lives. You're finishing a graduate degree while working full-time. You're patient with a chatty 7-year-old who asks 8,000 questions a day. You're brave and kind and honest even when honesty is terrifying. I'm also a mess who cries in bathroom and checks the locks on the doors 3 times before bed and still sometimes panics when someone raises their voice." "Yeah, and that's okay too." Ryan squeezed her hand. "You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love, Victoria. You just have to be you." Victoria started crying then, the good kind of crying that felt like release instead of pain, and Ryan held her while she cried, this man who'd somehow become her home, and she thought about how lucky she was. Not lucky to have survived Damien, not lucky that things had worked out, lucky to have found someone who saw all of her, the broken parts and the strong parts and everything in between, and loved her anyway. A year later, on the anniversary of their first date, Ryan took Victoria back to the rooftop where they'd met. Not inside the expensive restaurant, but outside, where they'd stood a year ago and decided to get tacos instead. Emma was with Ryan's mom for the night, which should have been Victoria's first clue that something was up. But she was terrible at picking up on hints, so she didn't figure it out until Ryan pulled out a bag from El Corazon and grinned. "Tacos?" Victoria laughed. "This is the most us thing ever." "Wait for it." They sat on the rooftop. Ryan had somehow gotten permission, had probably charmed the building manager, and ate tacos while the city spread out below them, all lights and possibility. When they finished eating, Ryan pulled out a small box. Victoria's heart stopped. "Before you panic," Ryan said quickly. "This isn't... I mean, it is, but I'm not..." He took a breath. "I'm doing this wrong." "You're doing fine." Victoria's hands were shaking. Ryan opened the box. Inside was a key. Victoria blinked. "A key? To the house. I know you already live there, but it's symbolic. It's me saying that it's not just my house anymore. It's our house, yours and mine and Emma's. It's me asking you to stay, not just for now, but for keeps." Victoria felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Ryan." "I love you," Ryan said. "I love the way you push Emma on the swing until your arms are tired. I love how you stress about work and care so much about doing things right. I love that you cry at sad movies and get competitive about board games and still can't parallel park to save your life. I love all of you, and I want to build a life with you, a real one, the messy, complicated, beautiful kind. I can't parallel park, Victoria said through her tears. That's a valid criticism.
Ryan laughed. So is that a yes? That's a yes. That's 1,000 yeses.
He kissed her then, with the Chicago skyline as their witness, and Victoria thought about how a year ago she'd been terrified of this exact moment, terrified of letting someone in, terrified of being vulnerable. But she'd done it anyway. And it had been worth every terrifying second. They stayed on that rooftop for hours, talking about the future they wanted to build together, about maybe, eventually, getting married, about whether Emma would want siblings, about opening more community centers, about finishing Victoria's degree, about all the ordinary and extraordinary things that made up a life. And when they finally went home, to their home, not just Ryan's, Emma was waiting up even though she was supposed to be asleep, demanding to know if Victoria had said yes to the key. I said yes, Victoria confirmed. Emma cheered and threw her arms around Victoria's waist. Does this mean you're staying forever? Victoria looked at Ryan, who was smiling that soft, private smile he reserved just for her. Yeah, she said, hugging Emma back. I think it does. And for the first time in her life, forever didn't sound scary. It sounded like home. 3 years later, Victoria stood in the grand ballroom of a downtown hotel, watching people file in for the foundation's annual gala. She was wearing a dress that actually fit, that she'd been able to afford without checking her bank account 17 times first. Her hair was done professionally. She had actual jewelry, not the costume kind. On paper, she looked successful, put together, like someone who belonged here. But the best part wasn't the dress or the venue or the fact that they'd raised $3 million for the foundation's expansion. The best part was Ryan standing next to her, handsome in his tux, making jokes about the ice sculpture. And Emma, now 10 years old and convinced she was basically an adult, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself and explaining to anyone who'd listen about the community centers and why they mattered. The best part was Ryan's mom, who treated Victoria like her own daughter and who'd cried happy tears at their small courthouse wedding 2 years ago. And Patricia, who'd become one of Victoria's closest friends and who was currently trying to convince a wealthy donor to triple his contribution. The best part was Margaret, who'd taken a chance on Victoria years ago and who'd quietly finished her own degree alongside Victoria, both of them proving it was never too late to make things right. The best part was the community, the families who used the centers, the people whose lives had changed because someone had given them a chance, a space, a reason to believe things could get better. Damien wasn't there. He'd stayed in New York, as far as Victoria knew, living his own life in his own world. She didn't think about him much anymore, didn't check his social media or wonder what he was doing. He'd become a person she used to know, a chapter in her story that had ended. Sometimes, when Victoria told Emma about how she and Ryan had met, Emma would ask about the mean man who'd been scary. And Victoria would tell her the truth, that sometimes people hurt us, and sometimes we have to be brave, and sometimes being brave means asking for help instead of trying to do everything alone. Did you stop being scared? Emma had asked once.
No, Victoria had admitted. I'm still scared sometimes, but I don't let the fear make all my decisions anymore. And that makes all the difference. Now, watching Emma drag Ryan toward the dessert table, despite the fact that dinner hadn't been served yet, Victoria thought about how far she'd come. From the woman who'd frozen at an expensive menu to the woman who ran 3 community centers and had a family and had learned that she deserved good things. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks and bad days and moments where she'd wanted to give up. There had been therapy and hard conversations and learning to trust again when trust felt impossible. But she'd done it. She'd survived. More than that, she'd built something real. Ryan caught her eye from across the ballroom and smiled, and Emma waved enthusiastically, and Victoria felt her heart swell with a feeling she'd spent years believing she didn't deserve. Love, family, home, the kind of happiness that came from being honest, from being vulnerable, from letting people see you at your worst and trusting them to stay anyway. Margaret appeared beside her, champagne in hand. You look contemplative. Just thinking, Victoria accepted a glass from a passing waiter. About how different things are now. Different good or different complicated? Both, but mostly good. Victoria smiled. Really good. You've earned it, you know, all of this. The success, the family, the life you've built. You did the work. Victoria thought about that, about the years of therapy and night classes, about confronting Damien and telling the board the truth, about all the small, brave decisions that had led to this moment. I had help, she said finally. I couldn't have done it alone. Nobody does anything alone, Margaret said, but you had to be willing to accept that help, to trust people. That's the hard part. It had been the hard part, learning to trust after being hurt, learning to believe in good things after expecting the worst for so long. But Victoria had learned, and now she was here. The gala was a success. They raised the money, made the connections, celebrated the wins. And when it was over, Ryan drove them all home, to the house they'd bought together last year, bigger than his old place, with a yard where Emma could play, and a home office where Victoria could work late without waking anyone up. Emma fell asleep in the car, exhausted from dancing and talking and eating too much dessert. Ryan carried her inside and up to her room, and Victoria followed, watching him tuck their daughter in with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing this for years. She had fun, Victoria whispered in the doorway. She always has fun. She's 10. Everything is fun. Ryan kissed Emma's forehead and joined Victoria in the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind them. They went downstairs together, kicked off their fancy shoes, and collapsed on the couch in their formal wear like they were too tired to care about being fancy anymore. Thank you, Ryan said, pulling Victoria against his chest, for everything, for being here, for building this life with me. Thank you for asking me to. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of knowing each other, of building a life together one day at a time. Do you ever think about that first date? Victoria asked. About what would have happened if you hadn't suggested we leave the restaurant? All the time. Ryan pressed a kiss to the top of her head. And I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be here. I think we needed that moment, needed to see each other being honest instead of trying to impress each other. I was so embarrassed. I know, but you didn't have to be. That's what I was trying to tell you. Victoria thought about that woman from 3 years ago, the one who'd been too scared to admit she couldn't afford dinner, the one who'd believed she wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. She barely recognized that woman anymore. I'm glad you saw me, Victoria said quietly. Really saw me. Not the successful CEO version. Not the version I thought I was supposed to be, just me. That's the only version I ever wanted. And there, in their living room, in their house, with their daughter asleep upstairs, Victoria finally understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not perfection, not a life without problems, just someone who stayed, someone who saw her completely and chose her anyway, someone who made tacos feel like love.